As we call to order tonight's regularly scheduled meeting of the Jinx Aquarium Authority. Today is Tuesday, February 15th. It is shortly after 5 p.m. and Mr. Macy will start us off with roll call.
Montgomery. Here. Kalen.
Here.
Murray. Here. Rowe. OJ.
Here.
Bonds. Here. Box.
Here. Everyone's attendance. Item number 1 is official action business, consideration and appropriate action relating to requests for approval of tonight's consent agenda. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve item 1?
I move to approve. Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion and second for item number 1. Let's vote, please.
Montgomery. Yes. Kalen.
Yes.
Murray. Yes. Rowe. Yes. OJ.
Yes.
Bonds.
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you. Item 2 will pull. Item 3, the request to proceed with a jellyfish touch exhibit and approve resolution number 81. A resolution amending the annual appropriations by $167,000 in account number 909235392, also known as the JAA Operating Fund, Capital Items, Building and Improvements, fiscal year ending June 30th of 2022 to fund the exhibit. Page 34 in the packet if anyone would like to follow along. Is this Mr. whoever's Mr. Alexopoulos? Good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you, man. So we obviously completed our revamp of our amazing invertebrates gallery, and so to keep things, our goal is to try to get at least one exhibit done a year, something that's affordable that we can, advertise and keep something new for people to look forward to, and keep a nice boost to attendance. One of the things that we were needing in that gallery is a interactive. So we have interactives throughout the aquarium spread out, and those are what really ensure that kids want to come back because they love doing things. And so that one gallery, the only interactive in that area is really the submarine in the Sea Turtle Island. So having a jellyfish touch experience there would be, I think, really well received. That concept is just getting started in the aquarium industry in the U.S. So we'll have one of the few jellyfish touch out there, which is really neat. There's one in Sarasota at the Florida Aquarium, and there is one at Ripley's, and I believe, did Georgia have one? I don't remember if they did. Maybe the Tennessee, but there's not too many of them out there. So the good thing is there's a company that does make the tank. It's a 12-foot long, about 30 inches tall touch tank, and that's basically plug and play, which is great. And it has an acrylic base so you can see the jellyfish. The species that we're going to be using are moon jellies, which we grow currently right now in abundance, and they do not sting, so there's no danger involved in it. But it's going to be unique to that area, and it'll be unique for our aquarium to actually be able to touch jellyfish. And finally, that exhibit or that gallery, what we're trying to do is complete these galleries. And when we first started building the aquarium, obviously there was less funding and there was a time crunch. So we basically built a minimal critical mass aquarium to get people in the door. And now we're going back like we did with the amazing invertebrate gallery and finishing them off, both in the graphics and the paint, the wall treatments, that kind of thing, and the exhibits that we feel are appropriate and maximizes the visitor experience, and is also affordable and can be operated without increasing our operating budget. And this jellyfish exhibit fits into those into that criteria. So the area where it's going to be will be where it's the wall where the old fish exhibit was. And so that tank is down currently, and the tank next to it is a grouper tank, a grouper, which is outgrowing its tank. So we're really not sacrificing much in the way of what, what needs to be demoed and replaced by this exhibit. And you can see, and this is kind of a bare bones mock-up. It's the actual exhibit when we go further into the design as far as the graphics and stuff like that. It's going to be a little bit more involved, and but this gets you a pretty good idea of what it will look like. And it will be manned by a docent, to explain how to touch the jellyfish and explain what jellyfish are. And the exhibit does come with lids, so we can lock it down if we need to for after-hour events or when it's not being manned. So that's kind of the concept. And we plan on the tank, once it's ordered, is about a 3-month lead time. And we're going to spend that time obtaining the components, filtration, that kind of thing. One of the things that kind of snuck up on us with the supply chain issues was getting components for the last exhibit. So we're going to refrain from doing any demo until we know that the majority of the components, the critical components are here. And that's when we will do the demo and progress from there. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I have a
Thank you.
couple questions, only because I just want to understand all of it, and I love the idea. So do you rotate these jellyfish out, or, I mean, is it harmful for them to be touched?
They're remarkably tough. We do grow them in abundance, and they have a shelf life to them, and we do end up feeding them to our Pacific nettles. So our Pacific nettles. There's going to be quite a few jellyfish in there, so there won't be that much pressure on any one individual. And if we see any that are that are showing any signs of stress or that kind of thing, they can be moved out because we do have jellyfish holding tanks. We also display them in the same gallery where the octopus is. So there is a moon jelly tank there, which we plan on keeping. Yeah, absolutely. And they can be rotated between the two tanks if need be. So we have a lot of options.
Okay.
Kenny, a couple of questions on your budget. You listed 3,000 for animals. You're growing them already. What's that?
That is more of a contingency. If something crashes, jellyfish, it's just like a crop almost, and you can have a crash, whether it's a human error or what have you, and you can lose your adult jellyfish. You can also lose your broodstock, your polyps and that kind of thing. So in the event that something like that happens, we have a contingency to purchase animals.
And you listed 15,000 for electrical. I'm just curious, you're already supporting 2 tanks in that wall. I mean, does this use a tremendous amount more electricity?
No, it's we're going to make the currently the electrical isn't NEMA. So it's not NEMA specific in it. So we're going to change everything to where it's pertinent to a salty, wet environment.
Okay.
And there's certain GFIs that we're going to be possibly using electronic GFIs, and so and we may even need to look at the chiller. We're not 100% on that. We think we're pretty good, but we kind of, on the last exhibit, the electrical ended up being more than what we budgeted for. And part of the problem too was the supply chain issues. We were waiting and waiting and waiting. It's probably high, and I did shoot high on a lot of these numbers. So I'm actually hoping to come in considerably less, but it's kind of an uncertain time right now. And we really went quite a bit over on the last exhibit for a lot of the reasons of supply chain problems, and parts became very expensive quickly, whether it was lumber or drywall or, the components themselves. It was problematic.
Okay, your number on the tank, that's the recent number from that company.
Yes, and I did add it a bit.
Yeah, cause I know oil price has gone up.
Oh, yeah.
A fair amount in the last month.
Yeah.
That's the big determinant on.
Absolutely. The quote's probably 3 weeks old.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Oh, you bet.
I may have missed my opportunity. And if I did, it's okay to tell me. I just was wanting to ask on the budget, and that probably came under the consideration. There was, if you go to transfer in, transfer out, there was 30,000 transferred in and transferred out, but it's not listed as to what.
You're referring to the consent agenda? Where are you?
It's on the,
What page? Oh, the, okay, I got
it's
you.
on the back side.
Page 32?
So,
So it's just an in and out, but it doesn't tell us where it came from, where it went to, what it was used for.
It's the risk management transfer. So every year we budget $30,000 to move to our risk management fund, kind of our rainy day fund that comes out of operations. And that's going from Fund 90 to Fund 91.
Is that something we should list in here so that,
We haven't done the transfer,
I'm just asking,
it's budgeted. It's in the budget.
okay, it's in the budget, but it's not on the list.
On what list?
This one,
Yeah, it's listed under budget.
Are you
Under the
asking,
budget section, year two, it's listed $30,000, and it hasn't been transferred yet, so under actual, it doesn't show
where
anything.
am I missing budget?
It's on the front page. You have actual budget, you have actual 21, 22, budget year two.
It just says financial position on my sheet.
Yeah, it says, but at the top of the column, it says actual, budget actual.
Well, I was just looking here
Mhm.
on the transfer in, transfer out, so.
are you asking that maybe the, it's, instead of it saying transfers to other funds, do you want it to be very specific?
Well, I
So
think
we
it
don't have
would
to-
be a good idea since.
So we don't have to ask Mr. Safsay to explain it every time? Okay. So
I mean,
would it make sense to just, going forward, if we can, just lower this to, make it, so I can read it. Transfer to rainy day fund, contingency fund. What did you call it?
It's our risk management.
Risk management fund? I'm with you on that.
And the 500,000's from the JPWA risk management.
so it can't, so just so it's clear for me, so it came from this to the JPA.
No, the 30,000 comes from Fund 90, the operating fund for the aquarium, into Fund 91, which is the risk management fund. The 500,000 is a transfer in from Fund 59, the Jinx Public Works Authority risk management fund. And that's for any operating deficiency.
Well, since I don't deal with this every day, I just needed clarification.
Well, it's a good question, because most of us don't. These fund numbers are all in space. I'm glad he has them memorized, but you and I don't. You want to be on the budget committee? Take my place? Is that a yes? You want to take my
That's
place?
a yes.
Okay, good. I don't have to go to that meeting. All right, thank you, Trustee Lind. Is there any more questions for Mr. Alexopoulos as it relates to item number 3?
Just one last question before you can time.
Yes, sir. So, once approved, we plan on ordering the main tank, and that's a 3-month build time. And we're allowing ourselves 8 months to complete the project, so 11 months total. And this is a lesser of what we've done in the past several exhibits. So, however, I want to be I want to be pretty conservative with it, so we're not, we don't dig into something and find that we have unforeseen issues. And part of, to go back to your question with the electrical, one of the things we run into, and the capacity is there. The problem is we're not salvaging any of it. It's going to have to go back to the junction boxes. And we don't know, we've had problems before with our electrical where when an electrician digs into it, either something needs to be updated to code or what have you, and could go all the way back to the breaker.
Yeah, I know that's an issue sometimes.
Yeah.
The code changes and it's great if it's grandfathered, but
Right.
then you can go in and touch it. You may have to-
Absolutely, and there's a certain amount of corrosion and things that are, it's the electrical is, over 20 years old and with the salt air environment, so we want to be prepared. I'm hoping that we just can take it right back from the junction boxes and cut this number in half, but if they dig into something and we have to have a little bit more extensive work, then we're covered.
Just more funding of it than anything, but if you, you mentioned you padded it and extras, contingency, so that I would assume there would be
Pardon me,
a final
excuse me.
accounting once it's complete. And I don't,
You need your mic on,
sorry,
thank you.
I said, I was talking about the funding, and whatever the cost is, I would hope that it would be final and brought back in, and if you don't use all the money, that it stays in the fund. Is that?
I'll refer to Robert.
Yes, that's how it works. Any unspent funds just go back to fund balance.
But along that point Mr. Rowe's making, I think it'd be good for us, just for satisfy our curiosity, when you do very conservative budgeting like this and you're asking for 167, when this is all said and done, is it's just a matter of personal interest. We'd love to know what the actual cost is, especially if you're coming under.
Absolutely.
I mean, it gets us to the point where we're very comfortable with understanding how you budget and what your contingency percentages are. So if you can come in at 132, we'd love to hear it, whatever that number may be.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that happens is when we start, it's kind of because we build everything ourselves, it's more of an organic way that it's being built, versus say a company that comes in and finalizes a design, gives you a quote, and no matter what happens, no matter what any further creativity strikes anybody, what's being built is what's being built. And so for better or for worse, and I think for better, the way we do things is that sometimes and oftentimes we start getting into things and we say, wow, what if we added this? What if we do that? And it's something that happened on the octopus exhibit, where we committed to a certain design, but we, as we were building it, we really thought it would be a great thing to continue the theming all the way around the corner, and then we started adding more things, and we did start going over budget. So, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think you get a really great product, really creative product out of that. So, part of quote unquote padding it is also to allow for that if we want to add something specific.
Well, I'm not trying to get something less than what you're.
Oh, no, absolutely
I'm
not.
just saying that I would prefer that you do that thought-provoking analysis before you budget it. And so, because the incentive reverses. If I think I've got some extra money, I'll go around the corner.
Mhm.
And I just think it ought to be, the process should be thoughtful, brought it, and passed accordingly, because we're taking it out of money that we tried very hard to preserve and build up, because we don't know about other contingencies that might come up someday. And that would be my concern, and just because you get 167, you spend it all. If you don't need to spend it all, then it shouldn't be spent.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Alexopoulos? Very well. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve item 3, resolution number 81?
Move that we approve it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for item 3. Let's vote, please.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Murray. Yes. Rowe,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Bonds,
Yes.
Chair Box.
Yes. Item 4 is a discussion on the possible aquarium parking lot expansion. We're on page 37. There's a map of the proposed on the back. Is this you, Mr. Alexopoulos?
Yeah, I can start it out, and, but it's kind of a group, effort here. We have, Greg Helms, the architect that came up with the plans, is also here in case, certain questions need to be answered that I may not be able to answer. What you see there is the aquarium has, as everybody probably knows already, has a high power lines that go pretty much right through our property. And the area underneath is a right of way, obviously, to service those lines. And there isn't, you're not allowed to, it's prohibited to build any permanent structures under those power lines. So we're quite limited on what we can do with that land, or currently it's grass that we mow. They do allow for a parking lot, so that's something that doesn't affect their access to the power lines. We do have a shortage of parking on peak days. So when, in summer and spring break, we oftentimes have customer guests park in the grass or along Aquarium Drive and in the Circle Drive even, and in the grass. And so it's kind of a disadvantage. It's great to be busy, but when a visitor is coming to the aquarium and it is that busy where the parking lot is overflowing, it tends to deter people from coming to the aquarium because it obviously looks like it's too busy for them to enjoy themselves. So having a larger parking that even on the busiest days can accommodate all the cars and still have available parking, I think will boost our attendance.
And I think part of the issue here is, if we're looking at the parking lot and we're looking at the entire campus and trying to have a vision for the future, we keep, at the city, we keep being hit up, consistently over time about, well, can we develop this piece of the aquarium property? What about this piece? What about this piece? And I think that, the land in between the hotel and the existing quarantine building, there's been talks over the years about having that property developed. It's relatively small, and I don't know what parking capacity may be on that property. We've talked about, we just had a meeting today about the new quarantine building, and we're talking about building the new one basically a little bit to the west of where the existing one is, and kind of rotating it so that it's taking up some of the existing employee parking. But the benefit is now if we remove the existing quarantine, now you have additional land that's right along the river that could be used for whether it's a trail, a road behind the aquarium, could be developed. But we will be losing some parking if that's where we end up putting the quarantine facility. And just from a guest experience, I know that when I first came back here and was going to the Jinx Chamber banquet, and it's January and there's a lot of people there and you have to park so far away. There's ADA issues. We have handicap parking spaces that are, they're the closest we can get to the facility, but they're still pretty far away because there's this big grassy area. And I think that, when we first started discussing, why is there this big grassy area, it was like, well, the power lines are there. PSO wouldn't let us do anything because they have an easement. But, having discussions with them, it turns out, well, no, you can put a trail there, you can put a road there, you can put parking there. And I think that after, the busy season that we had this summer, we had, the busiest summer that we've ever had. And frequently there were cars parked in the grass, and Kenny was kind of lamenting this. And the fact that, we've had people have been interested if you can, the 1.6 acre property immediately west of the parking lot, I don't think that there's any aquarium use that that Kenny and I have talked about that, but there's other uses. There's restaurants, there's other entertainment, options that could be available there. And I think that, long-term, at least the vision of the city council is that some of the property that is deemed surplus by the aquarium and the JAA could be developed at some point. And I think that just as the facility itself grows, that, at least to me, it makes sense to have parking in the grassy area shown here. And I think that, to a certain extent, once the outlet mall opens, we have this road that was originally planned but never built, connecting the service road to the south to the parking lot. That the city and the JPWA could benefit quite a bit from having this completed and having the additional parking on site. So,
Could we highlight that, Brandon? Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Macy, somewhere on this map as to what we're talking about? So that anybody that's listening or watching, whatever, understands what we're looking at. So it's this area and right in front of the aquarium.
other side, Brandon.
It's on the left of that circle drive.
Yeah. There you go.
There's a pointer, Kenny.
Oh, thank you.
You should be able to point it. It'll control the mouse.
Oh, I can.
Oh, yeah,
I'll
don't
see
click on
what
it.
is.
Don't click on
All
it.
right.
Don't click on it.
Hello.
Is this me?
Yeah,
Just
hold on one second.
just
Hold on one
hit
second.
the X.
Can you zoom in one more?
You don't want me doing anything with computers, trust me.
No, don't print it.
Okay. All right.
Can you zoom in?
So am I doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, it's like, you gotta be smarter than a controller.
Yeah, don't look at the other one.
Sorry to be
But
so
that's a
complicated,
tall
I just
order
wanted
for
to
me.
be clear.
So in this area right here. Just,
Yeah, so there's 297 spaces existing, and it's basically just a big asphalt field. And this plan would add some islands, we'd also have it restriped. So we gain some parking just by restriping the existing parking lot and then adding the parking underneath the power lines. In total, we go from 297 to 500.
and we have some drainage issues in the current parking lot, and that's gonna get remedied as well.
But if
And
you're looking at 297 spots, I want to clear as to, we know because we've read everything, but where are we talking about on this map as far as gaining the other additional spaces?
Can you zoom in one?
Yeah, it's-
Mr. Macy, and then.
can you see where I've got the little, there you go,
All that.
all this area here.
And in our meeting this afternoon, we were talking about, the location of the quarantine building and potentially even having parking further to the north underneath the power lines right there.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to be clear so everybody understood.
What's the expectation of the source of funds to do this?
Well, I had talked to you about this just, probably 6 to 8 months ago, and you had said, well, you thought you liked the idea, but not necessarily, it wasn't the highest priority to spend aquarium money on it. And that's where I got to thinking about, I think this project makes sense regardless, but, if the aquarium continues to do well and continues to grow, we're gonna need the additional parking. And, if any of this other property were to develop over time, they might need some additional parking as well. And there could be some sort of cross-parking agreement. And so if the other property develops, that's gonna benefit the city of Jinx. And that's why I would propose the JAA requesting the funding from the city of Jinx or from the Jinx Public Works Authority once we identify what that benefit to the city or the JPWA is.
So we have economic development around the aquarium itself. If additional parking is needed, it could be viable with the additional parking.
Yeah, because this is all set up as a PUD. So
Yeah.
if we add parking, it's a shared resource.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because that they close at a certain time, they're still possible,
And
maybe restaurants or whatever's going on,
Yeah, that's always been my concern with some of the other proposals
Right,
is what was
Yeah.
gonna happen with parking.
yeah. I mean, you look at additional 200 spaces, that's a lot.
And
Sorry.
And on a, kind of on a smaller scale, but like, we've turned down, propositions of people wanting to have like festivals or like a car show or things like that, that would require some use of the parking lot. Even when they, were hoping that, okay, well, we won't use the parking lot, we'll use the grass, but everybody knows that that's not, who's gonna control that? So when we're in busy days, we just couldn't risk the possibility of sacrificing our parking from our guests when they're already parking in the grass. So that's kind of one of those things where we just have to say no.
If I could just share some of my thoughts on this since I've learned about it, and what I have listened to since I've been here, and Kenny, don't shoot me. I
Would never do
absolutely
that.
think you have done a fantastic job down there, but I think we're getting the cart before the horse. And let me tell you why. Because I really gave this some thought this afternoon, to be fair, because I have supported the aquarium and you and everybody. But I think, how many times in these past meetings have we talked about and spent and spent and spent, okay? And now we're doing spending on what ifs. So we just spent how many $100,000 on the merry-go-round, okay? That's gonna pay for itself, but it hasn't paid for itself yet. In the past year, we approved, because there was a bond or a loan that we had acquired some equity in. And we approved, what was it, 7.5 or close to $8 million, so that you could do improvements down there for the holding tanks and moving the, putt-putt or the miniature golf. So I'm just trying to put things in perspective here as to what we've spent this past year. And I don't know where we stand on the miniature golf, if you're still gonna do that, if it's still being looked at after I finish, then please. And this last tax season, Lonnie, Representative Sims, got where you didn't have to pay your taxes now, and you can use that to invest into the aquarium. And then the CARES package, every business I know got money from the federal government. And I'm just asking, it's a question. And so that's my question, did the aquarium or did the city get it on behalf of the aquarium? I don't know the arrangements between the city and the aquarium, okay? So that's why I'm asking that for two parts. Did the city get it on behalf of the aquarium or did the aquarium? I have a friend or a couple of friends with small businesses and they got care packages. The schools got care packages. Everybody I know got money. So did the aquarium get any money from the federal because of COVID?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
And the money that, Lonnie secured for us for the tax exempt is for, correct me if I'm wrong, it's for out-of-state marketing, that's right.
And how much money does the aquarium contribute to retiring all of these bonds and loans and things that we have approved? Is there a pot of money, so to speak, that the aquarium, like percentage-wise, does the aquarium, say, contribute 10% and the city contribute 90% to on the payments of what we do?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
The aquarium revenue bonds, the debt payment is $1.2 million a year. Between 2003 and 2015, the Vision 2025 sales tax paid $923,000 a year going towards that $1.2 million debt payment, and the remainder was paid by the aquarium or the JAA. In I believe it was 2016, the aquarium, that funding went away. And sometime in 2013 or 14, the city council or the Jinx Public Works Authority pledged all revenue above and beyond the cost of water for, I believe it's Cogentrix or Green Country Energy. So there's a 25% markup on all of that water. And so all the money collected from that customer is put into Fund 59 to secure the debt. It's the risk management fund of Jinx Public Works Authority to basically backstop the debt of the aquarium if in the event the aquarium did not have enough operational revenue to make the debt payments. And so when the Vision 2025 sales tax went away and that funding source went away, we had a charge to try to eliminate the transfer from Fund 59 to the JAA. And so in that first year, there was a $400,000 transfer. In the second year, there was a $320,000 transfer. In the third year, I believe it got down to $75,000. And last year was the first year ever that the aquarium raised enough money through ticket sales, memberships, everything else to make that debt payment all on their own. And I think we had something like a $50,000 surplus. So that's what we've been working on for the last, basically, 5 or 6 years, is trying to eliminate that I don't want to call it a subsidy, but eliminate the transfer from the JPWA to the JAA. So it's a pretty big deal going from a $923,000 transfer from basically city funds to the JAA standing on its own and making its own
I
debt.
don't have a problem
Yeah,
with
and
that.
so that $1.2 million, what we did last spring, what was approved by this body, was issuing new revenue bonds that go out to, let's just say 2044, and extending that debt, but locking in the $1.2 million debt payment amount. And so that's where we have right now basically the money to retire the existing bonds that were issued in 2014, and that'll leave us with the $7.5 million to spend on the quarantine building, which is, we absolutely have to have a new quarantine building.
Well, my understanding that 7 million or 7.5 or whatever, how much it was in addition, the quarantine building wasn't gonna use all of that money.
No.
That it was gonna be used for other renovations or down there. Would that be correct?
It'll be used for capital improvements, and it must be approved by this body.
Is a parking lot a capital improvement?
It absolutely is a capital improvement. I think the question that we have to ask is, what do we want to see potentially developed on the aquarium property? I entered into this proposition here, this proposal, by assuming that this may not be the top priority of the JAA to invest $1.2 million in expanding the parking lot another 200 spaces. What's going to be the return for the aquarium on that? Well, not a whole lot. Are we going to continue to operate? Are we going to continue our forward momentum without this parking lot? Absolutely, and I think that everybody would agree. Where I'm coming from is, I also represent up to other bodies, and I look out for their interests as well. And is there a way that those two other bodies can partner with the aquarium? And we've already seen it with the property in between the hotel and the
Well, and I
quarantine building.
represent the citizens, Christopher. And so when we use tax funds for the aquarium, what is our citizens getting back on it? Okay, so there's a lot of stuff here that needs to be talked about, because there's a lot of money flowing, but we don't have an endpoint to paying off even one of these. And we keep going back and we keep going back, or we keep giving money and we keep giving money to the aquarium. So here's the point that I'm trying to say. Lonnie, Representative Sims got the relief. If you take that, I think it was between $150,000 and $200,000 that was gonna be tax relief from the state, and you put that in a parking lot fund for 5 years, you're gonna.
It can't be used for the parking lot. It can only be used for out-of-state marketing. We can't use the 200,000 or the 150,000 towards a parking lot fund. It's restricted for out-of-state marketing. And so I guess the question would be, the city council, the JAA, everybody approved $800,000 going to the aquarium to help the land in between the hotel and the quarantine develop. This is actually something where all I'm saying is, here's the concept. what would the benefit be to the citizens of Jinx and to the city and the JPWA if the city or JPWA funded this parking lot? And I think the answer to that question would be, could we do some sort of RFP on the property, the 1.6 acres immediately west of the parking lot, to have sales tax producing uses?
We don't know that, both know somebody would like to have there, but there's nothing on paper. We're doing what ifs here, I think that's what bothers me.
Well, that's why this is a discussion topic. No one is asking anyone to vote on anything. I'm trying to gently bring this up and say, hey, when I first went to the aquarium, I wondered, why on earth is the parking lot so far away from the building? Okay, so there's something here that could benefit the aquarium, and potentially, that's all this is discussion on possible aquarium parking lot. And so the potential is, you're right, we don't know what is the benefit to the city, the direct benefit to the city or JPWA. I don't know that, but I'm not recommending anything at the moment. I'm recommending, can we try to figure out what that benefit would be?
No, I'm not saying you're recommending. What I'm doing is trying to share my thoughts on how much money has been spent, where are we in this money, could a savings account be started? Because we haven't even had anybody give us a site plan, they haven't even had a pre-development meeting, there's nothing there. As far as parking on the grass, that's seasonal, it's not all the time. Just like I shared with you earlier, we get it all the time in my neighborhood of parking on the grass when we have events in Main Street. That's not unusual for here. Is it ideal? No. Can we do the parking lot? I'm not against the parking lot, I just think that this is not the time to do it. I'm one of those mobile challenge people. And getting it closer to the door and getting us graciously told me where I could park to make it easier for me, but not everybody has that. But I'm just saying, I understand the importance of the mobility part of it too, in regard to being able to get more handicap closer to the door. But I think that we have to be good stewards as we go forward with the money, with all the money that we just did. We just, the jelly thing, I think it's great. And that's money well spent because we'll get a return on that. So I hear all of this, but I also hear a lot of money going out the door. And I would like to have a little more, I actually would like to have a savings account through this from one of these funds. Say the city put in 10,000, these are just numbers. If the aquarium put in 10,000, in 5 years you could just pay cash for it. You wouldn't have to take any funds from the citizens. That's all I'm trying to say here, is to think outside the box as we go forward with this.
Well, if we want to wait 5 years, then if that's the direction of the JAA and the city council, then I'll just tell anybody that comes, we're not doing anything, you can't develop anything within 5 years, because we're waiting on the.
If I may, and I can appreciate the point, and I know where she's coming from. I think our default, as good stewards of taxpayer money, we are all among that group, we all live here. Our default answer to raising people's taxes, in my mind, is always no. But we did get elected, and the same people that elected us to save money also trusted us to take some risk when needed. We've taken risks lately. We've gotten into the real estate business, and we've asked the city to purchase land for millions of dollars. We're taking a risk, but we got elected because I think people trust us at some point that if we are taking a risk, there is a return. I think Mr. Shrout, here's another example too. We've had people approach us and say, I want to work on Main Street, and I'm not doing it unless you promise me parking. There's no development on Main Street. We're not going to get the big, nice things on Main Street if we don't get more parking. We've had meetings where people want to build in and around the aquarium, but they won't do it with the current parking lot. And I dare say they won't even talk to us again if we don't show any hope that there could be a better parking situation in the next 3, 4, or 5 years. All of this kind of being said, in my opinion, when Simon gets back to building and we see a mall that looks like a mall, I think the value of all this property, I think, goes up in my mind. We as casually, we all like to say that Simon will spur and it'll be the kindling that kind of lights the fire that I think is going to take seed growth all over the city. We have had, I think none of this is just discussions. The good news is we don't even have to agree tonight. And I think we can have more of these discussions, but the reality of it is if we're gonna see potential big box or even small box investment in this area, nobody's gonna do it unless there's some hope from us that we're gonna have a better parking situation. So in a sense, we are taking risk with other people's money, but it won't be the first time we do it. But we won't do it without thoroughly kind of, we're not gonna get this done tonight, but we're not gonna do it without kind of turning over all the rocks and having some real numbers to evaluate. But, and I think we wouldn't even do this if we didn't have the confidence from that we were gonna have shared parking agreements, we wouldn't even consider it. I mean, I personally asked him the other day, do we really, how many days a week, how many days a year do we really need 200 more parking spots? What's the answer? Guess.
You'd be surprised.
Probably, I would say maybe 50, 60 days a year.
Okay, so these are the holidays and they're the big warm weather days, it's seasonal. Yeah, so you could make an argument that do we really need this? Is it an urgent need? The answer is probably no. It is a want, but I think if we do something like this, it also gets the attention of some of the other developers that I think we don't all know necessarily what all conversations are having, but when they see that we're talking about 200 more parking spots with shared parking agreements and that their customers will have some place to go, I think it makes the development of all this area over here more attractive.
As I said.
So it's a risk.
I'm not against the
Yeah.
parking lot. I'm just trying to expand on how we look at it.
Sure.
And how that it's done. Do I know we're gonna need that in the future? Yes, I do. But at what point do we do that? You know, that's all I'm trying to say. This is the money that we've been approving, this is the money that's been flowed through. At what point do we make that decision? When somebody brings or does even a pre-development meeting or even a site plan, then you could nail down. And so that's all I'm saying on this. Not to get the cart before the horse, because if that's the case, we would have widened Elm Street all the way to 131st before all the additions were built. We expect all these additions, so let's widen the street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the good news is that the point of this discussion, we've accomplished exactly what we came. We have all these viewpoints to consider. Have we even heard from everybody? Okay, let's go ahead and I'll pause for a moment, Mr. Rose.
Just kind of piggybacking on Trustee Lynn, I don't think Chris is saying this, but, I don't want, with whether we do parking or not, but let's say we do, at some point, I don't want that to be a green light that the rest of it is, we're gonna fill it in. I think we ought to be more proactive in saying, this is the last really attractive land that we're gonna have the rest of our lives, and hopefully the aquarium will go on forever. So why don't we start thinking and build that runway longer to say, what is the highest and best use of that property related to the aquarium? Because I think that's gonna require a super majority vote to get, because it goes outside the aquarium. It's no longer the aquarium's property at that point. And,
Which property are we speaking of, under the power lines?
no, I'm not talking about the parking right now. I'm talking about the subtleness of saying, well, we're gonna develop the rest of that land. Probably at some point we will, but I'd like this body and other bodies to say what would be the best thing to do in that area. And right now, we're more reactive. When someone comes and says, I wanna do this, and we go through, all the analysis, and most of the time it doesn't happen. But why don't we be more proactive about saying, okay, this is the last of the land we're gonna have. What is the best use that we can do with that? tied with the parking, yes, but maybe not today. But that would be a broader, long-term plan that I would like to see. Secondly, for me, I think I understood that you're saying that JPWA would be the funder of this.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
We have this
Okay,
Fund
that's what I'm
59 that
saying. You
if,
recommend.
yeah,
Okay, so, we've got roughly 3,500,000 in the, unrestricted fund after, I don't know if that includes after tonight or not, but that money is really, valuable to us. And I want us to be very good stewards of, because that is money that could have, at some point, if we needed to fund the debt service to keep the thing afloat, we need to have those kind of funds available to us. And I'm just glad to hear that what you said, because if you're saying, let's just, I mean, it's like, my way of thinking, it's like burning a hole in our pants here to get rid of all this money. I'm not, I didn't hear that, but I'm concerned about it.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Mr. Montgomery, anybody else? Oh, we should keep an eye on the clock if you would.
Yeah,
please.
I'll just be real brief. I mean, I think, parking would be nice for everybody. My biggest concern is just the funding of JAA's availability. And in fact, with the new quarantine building, we yet don't know what the real cost is. And so, that's something I think we have to be real careful of, and that's probably our biggest priority. And that's why I said, Chris, the other, when you and I briefly talked about it, that I didn't view this as the JAA's biggest priority. But I do think that parking would change how some of the people would look at developing the area. Because it's a problem, and it's been a problem because of the PUD nature. I didn't want somebody building something and using what parking we had for free, but that's basically what happens because it's a shared asset under the definition of a PUD. So, I think we have to be real careful of that, but adding more parking, and that really relieves that, and I think does make it a little easier to develop some of those areas. But as Harvey says, I think we gotta do it the right way.
Harvey, I want to say, Mr. Rowe, I completely agree with what you said, and I want you to continue to have confidence that the council, well, we want what you want. There's only so much real estate there, and once we develop it, that's it. We know we can't get it back. And just if it helps you more, we have been approached by a local business that wants to do something there. And frankly, my first thought was, wow, that takes up a lot of space. And if that business, it's very niche. If that should fail, we have this giant thing sitting there. We don't get second chances. I'm pretty sure we've asked Mr. Shroud and our city planner to consider a master plan for the campus, what we'll call the aquarium campus. I think we only get maybe 1.5 chances to kind of get this right. The council's completely on board with you that we do not want to mess this up. We don't want to be reactive and say yes to everybody who says, I want to build, XYZ zipline park and take up all your space, because if that goes out of style or out of fashion, we're stuck with it. So we're there with you. We do have the same goal. But back to Mr. Shrout's point, we hear it all the time. Some of our councilmen hear it all the time. If you don't give me parking, I will not continue to have discussions with you anymore. So there you go. People want to have their customers need a place to park. So that's kind of what we're always bouncing back and forth. Mm-hmm. I think this has been a healthy discussion. We'll give 2 more minutes to anybody else who may want to comment, and then we'll wrap up item 4. Anyone else?
Can I just,
of course.
Fund 59, I understand that there is a $50,000 surplus in there now.
Fund 59,
Yeah,
so that's
said this year we had a 50.
So that was in Fund 90, our JAA operating fund.
Okay.
So just operating this past fiscal year.
I thought you said Fund 59.
Fund 59 is quite a bit more than
I did
50,000.
too, Harvey.
You know, I'll say this, when I first started doing this 5 years ago, I sat down with 2 other counselors and we put the screws to this guy and said, you better make this thing profitable, this aquarium. Not all the council then like staring at something that they see as a money pit or a debt. So I will give our city manager and you and your staff a pat on the back for turning something and I guess we could say this thing is actually turning a profit and
Surplus.
a surplus, yeah.
And
Thank you.
I'm
So we got the right people on it. And to Councilor Trustee Lynn's point, I don't know the last time we've said no to you. But as soon as one of these things failed, then the checkbook will put a lock on it for a while. You know, when I envisioned walking into the Great Hall and getting run into by, mechanical whales going around in a circle, my heart, that's not where it's at. But if we trust you 2 guys that this will pay for itself. I don't think we have a reason yet you guys have not yet been unsuccessful in your approach to generating revenue. So that's kind of why, in my opinion, we continue to say yes. But so congratulations to you guys for the fiscal situation that we are in, and we do appreciate it. If there's no other comment, yes, Mr. Rowe.
I don't think Kenny's gonna have time to
He can say thank you and we can go about our business.
we ought to put a plug in for, Splash, because that also is a source of doing some of these things, and
Yeah.
that's happening, within.
February 22nd.
Yeah, it's stacking up pretty nicely. We have a lot of input. We have, I think we've capped our restaurants and bars. I think we may have a few more spaces for restaurants, but it's pretty full up, and ticket sales are doing quite well. A lot of donations as far as for the auctions. So I think this is going to be one of the most successful splashes to date.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and close item number 4. I appreciate the healthy discussion. We'll do staff report. Go if you could high level.
So I'll make it quick. So the carousel is on its way. It's being constructed. All the animals and color schemes have been picked out. Greg Helms is working with the company right now to finalize any unforeseen or any other details for the infrastructure. We are still on schedule for October 1st. We talked about Splash. We have over 300 opt-ins for our new texting program for promotional items and that type of thing. We're trying to build quite a large pool of possible visitors through our texting program, and hopefully in time for next Christmas and Black Friday and Cyber Monday, we'll have a whole other tool in our toolbox for marketing. Easter egg hunt's already being planned. Candy has already been ordered, and our bags have come in, and so that is, we had a really successful Easter egg hunt last year, and we're actually going to open it up to more people. Our capacity was quite adequate, so it's a far cry from our first Easter egg hunt where we ran out of candy in the first 30 minutes. And our bull sharks are being conditioned to take food from an apparatus. The bite test that we discussed last JAA is moving forward. We did a preliminary bite test. I didn't invite anybody because we're still feeling out the sharks and they're still feeling out us. And the bite gauge that was proposed to put into that sleeve was quite bulky, and the sharks didn't want to eat that large chunk of metal, and I don't blame them. So we have a different mechanism for measuring the bite force that we're going to try, but they will take the fish, and we very much do believe that they will take that sleeve, provided it is low profile. Sea Turtle Island, we had a new batch of fish going in. All the original fish are actually from before we did the Polynesian Reef remodel, so they're quite old, and through attrition, it was time to get another group of young fish in, so that's really looking good. And I'm gonna leave you with that. Does anybody have any questions? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Alexopoulos. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Sorry.
A motion, a second to adjourn, vote please.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Galen,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Chair Fox.
Yes, we adjourned at